It's been a heck of a day for you here, DJ. Your boy Aaron Rodgers reports to camp. You essentially secure like $100 bet from me. I've got a little bit of an out, but I'm pretty much ready to concede that. With all that being said, how insufferable are you going to be on today's episode?
I might be the worst DJ you've ever met in your entire life. Like, I'm pretty bad in general, but this might be the worst I've ever met in my entire life.
Well, let's get into it because I'm excited. Well, I'm not excited. I am the opposite of whatever excited is. So let's get loaded. Because this is the Loaded Box Podcast.
Well, we never finish first because we finished last. I'm all off.
Look at that. He's already insufferable. He's forgetting the beer crack, but our boy Mikey is right there. Has your back, DJ, so you owe him a big one there. I'm excited. The reason why I am excited for this episode is because we're going to talk some fantasy football. It's fantasy football. Teams are getting ready to report here. Pretty much everyone reported today. Real practices starting tomorrow. But before we get to that point, I'm going to regret this, but I have to turn the floor over to DJ quick. But I'm going to ask you a question instead of just turning it over to you. How wild is it that after all of this offseason talk about Rodgers skipping training camp, maybe retiring, wanting to get traded, needs a new contract, whatever it may be, how wild is it that Randall Cobb, of all people, is the linchpin in this deal?
Here's the thing, and I've heard a lot of radio shows talk about this, and I've heard a lot of this shit where it's like Aaron Rodgers was owned. The Packers owned Aaron Rodgers. I massively disagree. Randall Cobb isn't the only move that was made because of Aaron Rodgers. This was just part of what's happened as of recent. Aaron Jones plays for the Green Bay Packers because they wanted to keep Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Jones is still in that team because of Aaron Rodgers. Preston Smith is still on that team because of Aaron Rodgers. There's no reason to keep Preston Smith. He was useless. He was dead weight. They could have got rid of him. Sean Gary had a great year. They didn't need him, all right? Cobb is just – people forget that the offseason happened. Cobb's just like that final little, like, I'm going to be the GM. I'm the fucking captain now. I'm Aaron Rodgers. I'm here. And you're going to do whatever the fuck I say. That's just it. You're going to do what I say. And it's going to be as little as I'm going to make you sign 31-year-old fucking Randall Cobb because I can make you do that. He's back. He'll be here for 2 years. I've continued to be right about this. I'm owning Ben right now. This is a rough day for Ben. I'm sorry, Ben. You owe me $100 because he will be the starter on day one unless he dies. Number two, the whole Xavier Howard thing couldn't pop up at a better time. How the turntables, huh? You were shitting on me all season, like, haha, you're in denial. Rodgers isn't playing. Next thing you know, your best fucking player is just sending out iPhone app notes about how he hates the organization, he wants to be traded, and your world's falling apart. You're tired. We're moving back 30 minutes. Everything is turning DJ Primo. I like to stay up late, and everything is going against Ben. Fucking Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers, Super Bowl or bust. Let's fucking go.
How satisfying was that to you? Like, could you just end the podcast right now and just be happy with how the day turned?
I fucking drop the mic and just pull my pants down and, do some things.
Unbelievable. I am wearing my old Minka Fitzpatrick jersey just to pay homage to another fallen former Miami Dolphins defensive back. Been some wild news here. I do have some thoughts on that. I think I might sprinkle them in at the end. I wanted to give DJ the floor here first, though, before we do our fantasy talk. But before we actually also get into the fantasy talk, Mikey, what the hell's on your bed?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And we'll move on to fantasy talk. And with that, like I said, we're going to talk about the fantasy relevant players on both the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. Last week, we hit the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. So if you haven't checked that one out yet, make sure you go and do it. But let's kick things off at the quarterback position with the Cowboys. Dak Prescott coming back from injury, ADP as the quarterback 5, going as the 4th pick in the 4th round. I've got him as the best of all of us. I've got him QB3. Mikey's right behind there with QB4. And DJ, a staggering QB10. So with
That's
that,
changing. I don't have any idea why I have him at QB10.
Well, there went my question. I was going to say, I usually start with the outlier of the group. Why in your initial rankings, why were you even a little bit low on Dak Prescott?
I've been drinking. It was up north on a Friday or Saturday night. He's not QB10. He's top 6 at 7 at worst. I got no idea. He's moving up. I love Dak Prescott. He was on pace to probably be one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy last year. He's got all the weapons in the world. He has McCarthy, who refuses to run the ball, which is part of why Ezekiel Elliott's going to be a trash this year, because McCarthy hates running backs. Doesn't matter. Tony Pollard will get too much playing time, and that's half the reason why I love Tony Pollard. But we'll get to that. No, he's top 7, if not more. I don't know why I put him there. I'll move that immediately. I'll make my rankings this weekend because that's just not right. I'm wrong. That's just not correct location for him.
Mikey, since we're right on pace with his ADP, do you actually like him enough to, if you have that mid 4th round pick, are you taking a quarterback that early? And if so, do you have enough confidence in Dak to pull the trigger on him to be one of those early first top 5 quarterbacks off the board?
So I have confidence in Dak being one of the top 5 quarterbacks off the board, but I'm not the type that's going to be the one to pull the trigger. The only way that I land on Dak Prescott is if my league has the same mindset as I do and he slips and falls to like maybe the 6th round, probably 7th at the earliest for me, to be completely honest with you. I just don't value quarterbacks that high. But with that being said, I mean, Dak Prescott is in my top 5 QBs. He's my QB4. He was tied for 2nd weeks 1 through 5 last year. There was a 3-way tie between Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and himself. They were all within like 0.2 points of each other through 5 weeks.
And then what happened after that?
Well, Dak got hurt.
Oh,
yeah, it was week 5 when Dak got hurt. But I mean, he was on pace to be basically tied with Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes for the entire duration of the season. He's got an excellent receiving core. He's getting a tight end back this year that he didn't have last year. Ezekiel Elliott, we'll talk about him a little bit later, but he's obviously good for Dak Prescott, and Dak can move his feet. We know that. So yeah, I mean, if he's not locked into your top 5 quarterbacks for fantasy, I'm genuinely wondering what 5 quarterbacks you could put in front of him.
Right. Can I say something? Here's my one thought. Again, I'm gonna move him up. There's no doubt. My one thought of what my mindset could have been is maybe he's hesitant to run this year after the injury, which is a huge part of his upside, because he does run the ball, he runs in touchdowns. Maybe he just doesn't do it, because that was a pretty gruesome leg injury, and that might have been I think that's a reasonable reason to duck him, but he has way too many. He can't play afraid, but I do fear that he's going to have a big hesitation to have that rushing upside this year just due to that. And he can throw the fucking ball, so he doesn't 100% need to run.
That's actually the only thing that I was going to bring up that you two didn't cover, because I'm 100% with Mikey and DJ. It seems like you're kind of coming on board with moving him up your rankings there, maybe not even to 4 or 5, but at least in the top 7. But yeah, if there is one downfall, it's that, man, he's coming back from a gross injury. And yeah, it happened in week 5 or 6, whenever it was. But so he's had some time, but that was nasty. And yeah, running is a big part of that. So if he's anywhat hesitant to try to make a play with that leg, and he maybe throws the ball away more, takes off less, runs just in general less touchdowns, that's going to impact him. So I agree with Mikey. Like, I'm keeping him at that quarterback 3, quarterback 4 ranking, but at the same token, I don't think he's for me. Come draft day, I wouldn't anticipate selecting him, like Mikey said, unless he's maybe 5, but probably 6 at the earliest, and I just don't foresee that happening.
You and I were in a touchdown league. Absolutely take him too early in those super flex type of leagues. Yeah, but in our standard half point, 4 point per passing touchdown, whatever it is, I think all of us have a similar philosophy. We're not going to take him. I would, like Mikey said, if I do see an Aaron Rodgers, a Dak Prescott tumble 2 rounds, I'm probably not going to hesitate to grab them there and just be like, I can't wait an extra second. I'm not going to give them this much of a discount. So I can see that happening. Very rare in the leagues that I'm in, though. So I usually don't get a quarterback till around Kirk Cousins territory, as we were talking about last week.
Full circle. Let's move on to the Cowboys running backs. If you're watching on Twitter or YouTube, you'll see the ADPs in our current rankings. For those on audio only, you got Zeke Elliott, whose ADP is running back 7 at 107. You got Tony Pollard, who's running back 43 and going at 10.06. The elephant in the room here, and one of the main reasons why we wanted to discuss the Cowboys on this episode, is because DJ, he did just admit that he was drinking when he did his initial rankings. But Zeke Elliott at running back 17 is maybe the most just off the wall, terrible thing about the fantasy football rankings on loadedboxpodcast.com. Explain yourself. What happened there?
So he finished running back 11, I believe, last year. Tony Pollard, I thought, was pretty heavily targeted and used. Part of it is also because of Mike McCarthy. As I said, he falls in love with the pass game. They're a defense that's going to be giving up a lot of points, and they're playing some stingy defenses in that NFC. I just doesn't feel like they're committed to running the football. If they're not going to run the shit, I just don't understand how he could finish as like a top 6-7 guy with no Dak Prescott, like a guy who, when he's going to be fed the ball, like David Montgomery finished as number 4 once Tara Cohen, and then had this shitty, team around him. Why was Zeke not getting that same type of production that David Montgomery was getting? I think it's worse now that Dak comes back. What?
No, I'm just saying I want to talk next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. So I think it's worse. I do. I think it's worse. I think Pollard is continually getting better. I truly do think Pollard is better than Zeke, and I think he continues to cut into his carries. I really do. 100%.
DJ, I'll rattle off these rankings from a standard league just because I know that you're a big standard guy. As a rookie, finished as RB2, next year RB9 in only 10 games. Next year as RB5, next year as RB4, and then last year in 15 games, RB11. You talked about Dak getting hurt. Offensive line was in shambles.
Who was his coach last year, though? It's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of this equation.
We can allow that to be a part of it, but I don't think we can also ignore the fact that Dak is coming back and 3 of their best offensive linemen, 2 potential Hall of Fame offensive linemen are coming back. And let's also not forget, they paid that dude. They're not just going to ignore him. Tony Pollard might be a good running back. He might be your guy, but man, it's going to be Zeke. Like, if anything, I think myself at RB9, Mikey's got him at RB6. When I'm re-looking back at these, I think I got to get closer to Mikey. Like, it makes looking at your ranking just go like, we must be watching a different ball game.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think Zeke's a very good running back. Like, I just think he's fallen off. I think he's just past what he was. And I don't think we're going to ever see 3 years ago Zeke again. I just think it's done. He just doesn't have the shiftiness of the game anymore. I just don't feel it. I don't feel it. I've watched too much Zeke Elliott to feel like he's going to be a competent enough running back to grab him at the ADP he's going right now. I'm not going to have him in any league. No chance.
Mikey, go ahead and shed some light as to why we're right on this one.
I'm going to have Ezekiel Elliott in a lot of leagues because his ADP is not nearly where it needs to be. He's going 107 in the consensus right now, but I've seen plenty of mock drafts where he falls to the end of the first round. And if he does that in a real life draft, that's extreme value. Dak Prescott's back, right? Which is phenomenal for the offense. The offensive line is not terrible by any stretch of the imaginations. They have a fantastic wide receiver trio there. Weeks 1 through 5, Ezekiel Elliott was the number 3 overall fantasy running back to have. That was with Dak Prescott. Yep. And DJ, to go back to your point, like, why didn't he finish the season as strong as David Montgomery? The Bears were actually competing. There was no competition whatsoever. Tariq Cohen was out. Mitch Trubisky couldn't fucking do anything. They had Nick Foles there. They literally had to lean on David Montgomery. Ezekiel Elliott didn't get handed that same burden. In
Why
fact,
not? How did he not? They're in the worst conference in all football. They had a chance to make the playoffs the whole year.
Shut up. It's my turn. Shut up.
No, I always interrupt. That's what I do.
No, yeah. Well, you can listen to me because week 6 after Dak went down, they lost 38-10. The week after that, they lost 25-3. The week after that, they lost 23-9. After that, it was a close week where Zeke was actually handed 18 carries. The week after that, they won. He was carried 21 carries. After that, they lost by 17 points and then by they lost by 24 points and then by another 27 points or something like that. he wasn't handed a workload because there was absolutely no game plan whatsoever for Dallas to go out there and win any sort of game without Dak Prescott. With Dak back in the lineup, this is going back to Ezekiel Elliott being focused as a focal point on this offense. Do I think that he's going to have the longevity and be the RB3 on the season like he was on pace to do as of week 5 last year? No, I don't think so, because you're right. He is getting older. He probably has lost at least somewhat of a step since his rookie year, but the numbers don't lie. When Dak Prescott is healthy and in, Ezekiel Elliott is in no way, shape, or form outside of the top 8 of running backs. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, but it's not correct. It's not correct. He's still perfectly fine.
We all watched Aaron Jones be underused with Mike McCarthy. It's going to be the same situation. He's going to fall in love with this fucking downfield passing game. Forget that he can run the ball, play like he did with Jamal Williams way too much, give him the ball too much with Tony Pollard. If that's the case, like, that's just how it works. Like, I've watched it. I've watched the story over and over again, and I'm not gonna be the guy that dies with Ezekiel Elliott. And I'm going to laugh at you guys when I say I told you so.
I don't really know. I don't understand what you're going to tell us so on. But let me bounce to Tony Pollard before we go anything else. Yeah, if you're looking at Tony Pollard's numbers, he had 25 points in 1 week, right? Which is fantastic. Right. But that's the 1 week that Ezekiel Elliott was not.
He was targeted pretty heavily last year too, I believe, wasn't he?
No, he received 40 total targets the entire year.
I thought he had like 70 last year.
Nope, that's Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott had 71 targets despite playing in less games than Tony Pollard. So for what that's worth, I think you're too high on Tony Pollard in that aspect. But Tony Pollard has only seen a significant workload when Ezekiel Elliott is not playing. His best game with Ezekiel Elliott in the entire, plugged into the lineup, was 60 yards and a touchdown. Outside of that, he didn't see double-digit fantasy points one single time the entire year. There's absolutely no reason to believe why Tony Pollard's going to be featured in any way, shape, or form on this offense. He'll get 5 to 8 touches a game.
He's more explosive. He's just a more explosive running back. That's why
he's not more explosive. And the statistics will tell you that he's not more explosive. I'm sorry.
Did he average more yards per game last year with his few carries that he got? Pretty sure he had more yards per carry, but
he did have more yards per carry by 0.1. So
he's more explosive.
Yeah, more explosive on 100 more. Listen,
he is more explosive.
He had 144 less rushing attempts than Ezekiel Elliott. Mm-hmm. He was targeted about 32 less times than Ezekiel Elliott. He had fresh legs when he was called in, because he would on average get 2 attempts, 3 attempts, 6 attempts, 8 attempts on the ground. And that's really it. That's why he looks so explosive, because he doesn't have to touch the ball too much, man. Anyway, Ben, I'll let you take over. I've said everything that I could about Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. DJ, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you are very wrong about these Dallas Cowboys.
I am not wrong. I'm not wrong. I feel confident about this.
Oh, wow. What'd you do there, DJ?
I don't know. My microphone went crazy.
I remembered what I was going to say now, and I regret probably already even asking this, DJ, but don't you think there's a chance that Cowboys coaching staff would have taken some of what they learned from last year and realized we can get into shootouts when we have Dak Prescott and these wide receivers, but man, it doesn't work because our defense isn't quite there. So let's.
I feel like you underestimate the power of Mike McCarthy. I just don't think you understand the incompetency.
At some point, people have to evolve, and
no,
if they
don't,
get it going,
because he never did
game, and then be like, "Oh yeah, I have this all-pro running back behind me." Like, they're not going to just ignore Zeke Elliott. I think you're crazy for saying that. I don't like doing the Stephen A. debate show. You know, that's not what I do, and so you got to quit interrupting me. Otherwise, I'm going to leave you, and it'll be just you and Mikey.
That's fine.
I'm out. No, the only thing I wanted to add about Tony Pollard, I'm going to go to bat for his last name being Pollard instead of Pollard.
Yeah, I don't know what that is all about.
I'm honestly treating him the exact same way I would treat Alexander Madison with the Dalvin Cook situation. I'm not drafting him. I'm not reaching for him at all unless I have Zeke. I want the handcuff only, and I'm not going to reach for a handcuff.
I'm going to get Pollard when you take Ezekiel Elliott this year.
Then I'll have to trade, I guess, for you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's move on to the wide receiver, because as Mikey said, that Cowboys wide receiver room is loaded. CeeDee Lamb right now actually has the highest ADP at wide receiver 15. Amari Cooper is right behind at wide receiver 17, and then you got to go down a little ways to find Michael Gallup at wide receiver 51. Mikey, you just wrote an article that you can find on Loaded Box Podcast, and I believe you said Amari Cooper was the Dallas Cowboys pick for a player that's a little bit underrated that you should definitely be drafting this year.
Yeah, I mean, Amari Cooper is being drafted. I believe it was like 4 or 5 spots after CeeDee Lamb. So, I mean, they're pretty close together. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1 of that team. He's had over 1,000 yards every single year for the last 3 years. He's been the highest targeted player on that offense since he's been there. And he's got a fantastic rapport with Dak Prescott. The reason why Amari Cooper is so underrated, in my opinion, is because of the inconsistency that he's shown in years past. Like if you look at 2 seasons ago, like he'd either win you your week or he'd pretty much lose you your week. Like he was going off for 25 or he'd get you 5, and his stats kind of evened out at the end. If you look at last year, it was a completely different tale. He was consistent almost through every single game, whether it was Dak Prescott throwing it to him, whether it was Andy Dalton. I'm pretty sure Ben DiNucci was in there at some point, and Amari Cooper was still doing perfectly fine. He's found his consistency. Is there going to be weeks where CeeDee Lamb scores more than Amari Cooper, and is CeeDee Lamb probably going to be a little bit more consistent? Yeah, I think so. But I think by the end of the year, I think Amari Cooper is going to have more points than CeeDee Lamb. And I do think that he's going to offer more week-winning upside in the end.
I agree with that. Like I said, I always like to highlight the outlier in this situation. And in this wide receiver room, like we said, this is only our initial rankings for myself and DJ. And DJ has CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver 26, whereas ADP is at 15. So that's a pretty significant drop. DJ, do you foresee coming closer to the average on this, or do you have a reason why you're lower on Lamb?
I am super high on Cooper, and I think I'm higher than probably what I have him ranked so far. I have seen this evidence when he was with Prescott. I don't know the exact numbers. I know Mikey did the study, so he could probably drop him. But I believe when he had Dak, he was just putting up this last year just unbelievable, like top 5 wide receiver numbers.
Yeah, so when Dak Prescott was still there, through 5 weeks, Amari Cooper was wide receiver 8 and CeeDee Lamb was wide receiver 11.
Yeah. The only thing I worry about with CeeDee Lamb is I still think he has another year of work to do. I don't know if his route running's is crisp. I still think Gallup cuts into that, so I think it's going to be more of an even split than people expect. I know people are obsessed with CeeDee. He's still in year 2, and I just think Cooper, it feels like he's one of the best guys at just purely getting open, separating. And that's just what he does. He just finds himself open. I am a big fan of Amari Cooper. He's just really good. And people are penalizing him for playing with shitty quarterbacks last year and finishing at wide receiver, 19 or something like that. That's why I dropped CeeDee down a little bit. I think him and Gallup are going to be closer together in that area. And our expectations may be a little bit too high for the second-year wide receiver. You sometimes see that second-year regression, so I'm just going to hesitate in year 2 a little bit as Gallup also continues to stride. And also, I think he's in a contract year, so it's a lot of shit Gallup wants to do. He's got to go somewhere and be a number 1 wide receiver soon.
It's funny because their ADPs are so close, and I feel like the fantasy community, as people want to call it, are so split on these two that it's literally a debate you're going to have. It's which Dallas wide receiver are you going to take when you're on the clock? And it's kind of like 2-3 years ago when you had the same conundrum between Thielen and Diggs. It's like they were always so close in their ADP. End of the day, though, they always finished right around each other. So I don't think you need to make it quite as big of a deal as what maybe the conundrum is in your head. I like both guys. I am with Mikey and DJ on this one. I would take Cooper ahead of Lamb, but I'm not going to shade away from Lamb just for that reason. But it's funny because we'll blend right into Gallup here because myself and DJ, I'm just looking at where we have him ranked right now. I've got him at wide receiver 39. That's Michael Gallup I'm talking about. DJ's got him at wide receiver 34. So we're both quite higher on him than his ADP. But Mikey's back there at wide receiver 56. And it's funny because was it Gallup's rookie year or second year when he he popped off. Like
It was his second year, yeah.
he flashed. I don't want to say he put up like baller stats, but he flashed, and you're like, Jesus, this guy is going to be a really, really good wide receiver too in this league. And then CeeDee Lamb enters the picture, and it's like, okay, well, we're not going to ignore our first round receiver at this point. But I still have hope for this guy. And honestly, at wide receiver 51 in the early 12th round, give me Gallup all day. I'll take him in the 11th, whatever. Like, I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. I'll load up on these guys. We all know injuries happen. If an injury were to happen to Cooper or Lamb, and I know we don't want to bank on injuries, but man, Gallup's going to step in and be a weekly start. Like, that's going to be a guy that you want to start on a weekly basis. So I'm all for taking any of these guys at their current ADP, which is kind of weird. You usually don't find a positional group where you feel that strong about it, but I am. But Mikey, why are you that much lower on Gallup? Why are you worried that the rest of the world is on Gallup?
I mean, here's the thing. Me and the rest of the world are way too low on Gallup. Last year when Dak Prescott was healthy, Gallup was in the top 35 of the receivers over the first 5 weeks. He finished in the top 40 of the receivers, even with the revolving door of quarterbacks, which means that he was worthy of, a flex start, or if you're in a super deep league and you're starting 4 receivers for some reason, he's in that wide receiver 4 territory. The thing with Michael Gallup, though, is that he is at best the third option on this team. There's no disputing that. With CeeDee Lamb coming more into his own this upcoming year, obviously we just talked about how much we all love Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup did receive over 100 targets last year. And I think especially with the extra game on the schedule, I do think that's still possible. So the fact that his ADP is wide receiver 51, and I'm even guilty of having him at 56, I do think that is being way too low on Michael Gallup. But one of my justifications for that is that inconsistency that I mentioned. So I know last year you can't really fault a lot of the stuff that went on with Dallas, but he had one game with 19 points, one game with 14, and one with 24. Every other game on his schedule, he had 5 points, 2 points, 7 points, 2 points. Like,
he ended pretty strong, didn't he?
He did.
Had a couple
one quarterback. I think Dalton became obsessed with Michael Gallup like the last 3 games. There's those 3 games that Mikey was talking about.
And you're just thinking of week 16 because week 15 he had 8.5. Week 17 he only had 5 points.
I feel like I remember Dalton just not locking in on Gallup every time.
So week 13 he had 7 catches for 86 yards. And then week 16, he had 6 catches for 121 and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But the thing is that Michael Gallup is more than capable of flashing big games like that. Like, we've talked about it. I'm so excited to see where he goes in free agency after this year, because I think I genuinely think he's a really good receiver, and he can easily be at least a wide receiver 2 on some NFL team out there. The fact of the matter is he's buried on – I don't want to say he's buried on the depth chart, but he's buried behind Lamb and Cooper, and we know that's a fact. And just those inconsistencies, like, you don't know when you're going to start him, and if you do start him, you're really just tossing a coin at that point. He's either going to help you win your league, or he's probably single-handedly going to lose it for you. Like, there's no in-between with him.
So I will add 2 things because I just want to add 2 things. I think if I was like Mikey and I had Gallup at 51, then obviously I think CeeDee Lamb for me would move up. But like I said previously, I do think Gallup is way more involved than what he's predicted. And I do think those targets and those receptions are going to actually bring them closer together, which is why I bring Lamb down and Gallup higher, because I do think they directly relate to each other. And also the gambler in me, the degenerate gambler in me, sees fantasy Twitter, right? And everybody's obsessed with CeeDee Lamb. And when I see that, I go the other way. Like, when something looks like that everybody's on the same page and they think it's like, this has to be CeeDee Lamb, he's going to go crazy. It's year 2. I think the expectations are way too high on this guy. And you need to still give him some time to come into his own and get rid of Michael Gallup in the next year. I think we're 1 year ahead of that top 10 CeeDee Lamb year. I think we're 1 year too early, and I'm going to fade all of that hype on CeeDee Lamb right now, and I'm just going to sit back, and maybe I'm wrong. That's fine, but I'm not going to – it's too much hype, and it makes me hesitate on it. It just feels like something's a little fishy in my head.
The only thing that – I can't blame you for being lower on CeeDee Lamb and higher on Michael Gallup. Like, it is what it is. Like, I see the talent in Michael Gallup. I do. But I mean, CeeDee Lamb's rookie year, he out-targeted Michael Gallup. Like he had a real, I mean, granted, they were really damn close. Like they were within like 6 or 7 targets of each other. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, when they brought CeeDee Lamb in, that ownership, that coaching staff, they were like, look, we're going to draw up a game for this kid, and he is going to be like our go-to guy. Like weeks 1 through 5 when Dak was there, CeeDee Lamb was targeted 18, 25, 34, 40 times compared to Michael Gallup's 25. Like if Dak's under center, it's a completely different offense. It's a completely different mindset for this. And if CeeDee Lamb is getting 40 targets for every 25 Michael Gallup targets, like there should be a no-brainer there. Like it should be significantly the ball is significantly more in CeeDee Lamb's court than it would be in Michael Gallup.
That begs the question, though. You guys are so high on saw a lot of these guys, but you also love Ezekiel Elliott so much. Somebody has to suffer.
No, they really don't. Dude,
yes, they really do.
DJ, they really don't. And you've just thrown everything out that I've said over the last 15 minutes. Weeks 1 through 5, when Dak was there, when that offense was clicking, when they were firing on all cylinders, they had the wide receiver 7, they had the wide receiver 11, they had the running back 3, and then even Michael Gallup was the wide receiver 33. That offense is high caliber, more than high caliber enough to support 3 legitimate receivers and a very legitimate running back.
You could give me any 3-week sample to try to prove a point that's never going to do it for me.
It's like a 5-week sample, and the only reason why I'm using that is because that's when Dak Prescott was actually playing for
I get
team.
it.
And that was the first 5 games with this coaching staff playing with Dak Prescott, with CeeDee Lamb on the field and everything like that. Like they're going to use that 5-game sample size to see their successes from that, and that's what they're going to build on. They're not going to build on the rest of the season. They're going to build on what they did with Dak Prescott last season.
He's gonna suffer. I'm telling you right now.
Before we move on to the Giants portion of this show, I wanted to say we have our group. We got a group DM for Loaded Box. We got a Loaded Box Snapchat. Did you guys see the Snapchat that Ryan sent of his grill from the Airbnb that he's staying at?
It was fucking disgusting.
The grill was disgusting. The flames. That thing was a fire hazard.
It had to. It had to be. It was.
I didn't ask him how his food turned out, but I wish I would have. Because honestly, if I were him, I'd have just punted. They were like, "We're ordering pizzas tonight, sweet cheeks." Like, there's no way that I was gonna make food on that grill.
If there's honestly, if there's one way where he could kind of lift up and somehow grill above the grills, that would be awesome.
Well, I've got something for you, DJ, because what I would tell that Airbnb owner is invest in some freaking man grates, because that's going to elevate it. You know what they pride themselves on? Even heat distribution. Check. Reduced flare up. Checked. Beautiful grill mart. Checked. Just basically perfect meat is what you're going to get when you get these man grates. So, hey, all Airbnb, all Airbnb owners, tell you what, step your game up, especially towards the end of summer here. Get some man grates, and what you should do, rather than just going out and buying them, go to mangrate.com, 25% off grates and brushes. Use promo code LOADED. Don't let our boy Ryan be going to the grocery store in some place that's a time zone away, buying all this expensive meat, and then coming home to a grill that is just a pile of poop. Get him a man grate. You won't regret it. Your reviews are going to go skyrocketing. There you go. Mangrate.com, promo code LOADED. With that.
Wait. With that, I just need to you use the term perfect meat way too casually.
I love perfect meat. It's good meat.
Every time we talk about man grate, I throw something in that Mikey just absolutely, I don't know if you love it or you despise it. How just like fluid it flows off the tongue. Like it's way too natural.
Who wants some man meat?
A little bit of both. It's a little bit of both.
But then I call it an Airbnb beer, and I just totally bluff everything. So
we should create that.
Let's talk after this episode. I've got ideas.
Oh, that shit. I think we just stumbled across something. Trademark. If you say it, is it okay?
Dibs. No, I gotta say it's dibs.
Okay.
Dibs.
I declare.
I do declare. With the Giants, we're skipping the quarterback position unless
I
you guys
wish we
want to talk
wouldn't.
about Daniel Jones for some reason. His ADP is basically making him as a person that you can get off the waivers. So with that, we're going to go straight to the running back, who is obviously Saquon Barkley. DJ, you kind of hinted towards him, which led us to doing this episode. You brought up an interesting question last time because you said if his ADP is really at 105 as the RB5 and all of this injury concern still surrounds him, and we keep getting sleeper notifications every other day about this guy, about how they're going to take the long-term approach with him. He might not do anything throughout preseason training camp. He might even miss a couple of weeks. What the hell are we going to do here? Because I've got him at RB5. DJ, well, I should say for now, had him at RB2. And Mikey, with his updated ranking, still has him at RB5. It's a hell of a conundrum. So I think we should just revisit the conversation we had last time, because you're sitting there at 105 or 106 and you're staring down a guy like it's either Saquon or Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor. I, for one, can say at this point in time, despite having them ranked lower, I'd probably take the safe route and go with one of the other guys at this point in the offseason.
Yeah, I'm hesitant. So here's when I rank him at RB2, I have to be like, Saquon, as Ryan called him, will, if he's fully healthy, if he plays the whole season, I can't factor in injuries. This is what I like. This is what I have to do. I think he's capable of being the best running back in the NFL. He can be RB1. I do think he's more talented than Christian McCaffrey. Sorry, Mikey. But he is fully capable of being RB1. If you don't think that, then you're just wrong, because he does have that skill set. But the hesitation, if I get to 2, if I get to 3, if I get to 4, and he's still on the board, I still probably I'm not taking him because I'm just hesitant. He's physically unable to perform. Obviously, we've already known that coming in, but he feels completely ready to go. But it's just those fears in the back of my mind. Maybe I'll go with a little bit of a safer option, right? But then at some point he becomes a value, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that area. But it's just like, it's the hesitancy of like, now it's like he had that ankle injury and then immediately he's just, the next season he's out for this like rest of the year with that was it a Achilles? What was it?
It was like ACL or MCL.
Yeah, it was his
No,
knee.
it's ACL. Oh, was it? Yeah, so he's out the rest of the year with that. So it's just like I'm hesitant to draft him that high, but I know that if he plays the entire year, I'm not going to regret it. It's a tough thing. Do I have the balls?
Yeah, I think the other injury that you're thinking of is his high ankle sprain from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
That was the issue.
Right.
My issue with Saquon
Barkley.
My issue with Saquon is that we've been chasing his rookie year. And like, obviously we all know that he is supremely talented, right? Like he made the Giants bearable to watch a few years ago. Right. Like he's absolutely electrifying. DJ, you're completely right. He is definitely more than capable of finishing as the overall number one, fantasy running back out there. I don't think he's more talented than Christian McCaffrey, but that's my personal bias. But it's just like I was saying, I mean, we've been chasing his rookie year. Like he was fantastic his rookie year when he was healthy, but then his second year, he basically lost half of the season. When he came back, he wasn't the same. Last year, he lost the entire season. You got to wonder if everything's going to catch up to him. He's not fully recovered at this point. The season starts in a freaking month. He's not there for the start of training camp, and there's still no real timetable. So right now, if my draft was today, I wouldn't even be drafting Saquon as the 5th running back off the board because there's too many uncertainties. Like I'm looking at my rankings. Like I have Zeke at 6. I have Austin Eckler at 7. I have Aaron Jones at 8, which now that I know that Aaron Rodgers is coming back, Aaron Jones is probably moving up for me. Like all 3 of those guys today, if I was drafting, I would take over Saquon Barkley because that's just, there's too much risk. And I don't want to take that sort of risk with my first round pick in a draft. Like your first round pick 100%. Is supposed to be your bread and butter, your guy that you're going to have all season. If you get unlucky and they go down with an injury, like Christian McCaffrey had never been injured. People took him number 1 overall last year and he went down with injury. That's a tragedy. Saquon Barkley, we have red flags already. Like you are consciously picking a risk of a player if you're taking him. So it's tough. outright, he's RB5 for me because like we were saying last week, in a nutshell, I prefer the safety of Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara or even Jonathan Taylor over Saquon at this point. But if we don't have more clarity by the start of the season, Saquon's not going to be in my top 5.
It's crazy. So I'm just looking at like, excuse me, the ADP right now for all these guys, and I'm honestly asking like, where's the cutoff point? Like, at what point do you make him the running back off the board? So if he's going at 5, you've got Jonathan Taylor, I would take him. Elliott, I would take him. Chubb, take him. Aaron Jones, like you said, with Rodgers.
Wait, who are you taking?
I'm taking these guys over Saquon at this point with all the uncertainty. Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler. I get to Antonio Gibson before I start finally having this, like, that's where I'm at. And that's at number 11. And I'm not, what I like is that we have this much time. Like, we don't have to make the decision today. So that's great. We've got time on our side. But man, it's like, what is that cutoff point where if I want that first round running back, it's exactly what Mikey said. You want your first round guy to obviously be a stud, but at the end of the day, you need that fucker to score every single week. And if Saquon's missing a couple of weeks to begin the season, he's going to have some catching up to do to even catch a guy like Aaron Jones or Austin Eckler.
Or should I say something right now?
Up to you.
No, you can say something or I can say something. Whatever.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you hit the nail on the head there. It's just you can't. It's just so risky, man. It's so risky. And like if he's in training camp by like the second week of training camp, so like if this time in a week and a half we see him on the field, I'll have full confidence, right? But if he doesn't gear up at all in the preseason, which he's not going to gear up in the preseason, even if he is healthy at this point, right? So that's already a red flag that he's not going to gear up whatsoever. You have to wonder how much practice is he actually going to get in. I mean, he has not had a football in his hand on a football field in drills or anything like that in almost a full year at this point. And I understand it's Saquon Barkley. He's a fantastic football player, but he's not exactly on the best of teams. He doesn't exactly have the best coaching staff out there. And you don't know what his recovery is looking like because we're so in the dark. So it's just, he is the good thing about redraft leagues is that your draft probably isn't for another 3 or 4 weeks. And we should most definitely have a little bit more clarity into the situation by then. However, if there is no clarity this time a month from now, I would not be surprised to see Barkley fall out of the first round entirely.
Wow.
I mean, I don't think it's that far off. I just listed all those damn running backs, and
if I'm at the end of the first round, I'll sweep him up. I don't care about those guys.
It'd be hard not to.
Yeah.
But if he's healthy, I'm leaving him right where he is. I love him at the 105 as running back 5. But man, if there is that uncertainty, if he is going to miss some time, running back 10, 11, 12 seems about where I would end up probably having him.
And then you can go back to back, right? You can get somebody
you could.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to if you're smart.
Little insurance policy, might as well.
He's like the perfect person to pair with that Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry kind of guy,
Yeah.
And if he's healthy, man, you have a stud loaded backfield. Like, that'd be just nasty.
It's awesome.
Seriously.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's go on to the Giants wide receivers. They currently have 2 with ADPs that show them being drafted in redraft leagues. That's Kenny Galladay as the wide receiver 23 and Sterling Shepard as the wide receiver 65. I've got a lot that I want to talk about really on this one, and a lot of it pertains to Mikey. Because first and foremost, we'll get back.
I just saw Mikey's.
Yeah, we're going to get back to the Galladay thing. But first, I want to talk about the Sterling Shepard thing, because you actually, in that article that I was talking about earlier, you kind of ignored Sterling Shepard and said that Darius Slayton, despite going undrafted, would be the guy that you have. And it shows because you have Sterling Shepard as your wide receiver 72. Not that his ADP is much higher than that in the first place, but you're more of a Shepard guy, or you're more of a Slayton guy than a Shepard guy.
Yeah, I am. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a Slayton guy. Let's make that abundantly clear here.
That was a little hyperbole. My bad.
But I would consider myself more of a Slayton guy than a Shepard guy. I mean, with Sterling Shepard, we've seen him play plenty of good games, right? Like when he's on, man, he's on. But I think with Sterling Shepard is you look at his 2020 season, and granted, the Giants were just one big clusterfuck in 2020 with losing Saquon. And I saw a stat today: Danny Jones has like 29 fumbles since he entered the league just 2 years ago, and he didn't even play a full season his rookie year. Like,
don't look up his fumbles, like not fumbles lost and fumbles recovered, and his interceptions, and it's so high. Like, you'll be like, oh, get this guy out of here
Turns
now.
it over a ton.
It's crazy.
he does. But anyway, so back to Sterling Shepard. I mean, 2019, he missed 6 games, right? That's, whatever. Last year, he missed 4 games with injury. And despite him playing in 12 other games, he only had 2 weeks where he was worth anything. And they came in week 16 and week 17. People aren't even playing in week 17, so that didn't help anyone. And even in week 16, not a damn person started him in their championship. And even if they did, his quote-unquote relevant week was 13.5 points. Like, this offense, I want no part in this offense, and I'll talk more about that when we touch base on Kenny Golladay. I don't want any part in this offense because this is going to be arguably the biggest offense in the NFL that spreads it around. Like Sterling Shepard's going to see his targets. Darius Slayton will see his. Kenny Golladay will see most of them.
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram's going to see plenty. They just drafted a first-round wide receiver, and granted, I'm not massive on Kadarius Toney by any stretch of the imagination, but they're going to target him. And they're going to be targeting Saquon Barkley a shit ton if he's healthy. Like, there is just not enough targets to go around. Sterling Shepard has had health issues. He's only had like 3 or 4 relevant fantasy games over the last 2.5 seasons. Like, there's nothing to like about him. Going back to what I was saying about Michael Gallup early on, Ryan, we love you too. It's Sterling Shepard is a perfectly acceptable person to throw in your lineup if you're just basically saying a Hail Mary, I hope you get me 25 points, but you're probably going to get me 3 or 4.
Right.
It's just
sounds like MVS.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, Sterling Shepard is just one of those guys where, he's going practically undrafted. Most redraft leagues only go up to 15 or 16 rounds. So going at 1703, that's saying he's not being drafted in most leagues right now. And rightfully so. Like, is there anything that either of you could say about Sterling Shepard that is there any reason why anyone would legitimately like him on their squad?
He demands the ball.
I was a bit not irrationally high on him, but I liked him as like a mid-round to late-round guy last year that I thought would be more consistent. And like the injury bug and then just the Giants offense was kind of fading away. Kind of left me a little bit sour on him. I think he's a good player. I just don't think that he's been able to be in an offense that's been able to feature him correctly over a given amount of time. So given his ADP, you take the fly on him as the last receiver on your team. I'm cool with that. But yeah, to think that he's going to be anything more than a very, very desperate bye week / injury guy, you're expecting too much. Because I do think they are going to spread it around, which kind of can bleed into some Golladay talk, because I will admit I was irrationally high on Golladay last year, which sucked because it turned out to be because you drafted him.
What'd you have him last year?
Like wide receiver, like 8.
I mean, that's a little high, but really not anything terrible. I mean, if you look at 2019, he had over 1,100 yards. I think he found the end zone 8 or 9 times. Like, he was really good in 2019.
Well, what sucked is like his injury and the fact that he was going to miss week 1 came out basically as the point people were drafting if you're a very late drafter. So that came out very late. And then it was just nothing from then. And when he played, he balled out. But Kenny Golladay has limitations. Like, he played with Stafford, a very good quarterback. And he did well with him. He was peppered with targets when he got the chance. But in this offense, he might get exposed a little bit. So I cooled down to wide receiver 21 on him. But I will say he's going at the 10th pick in the 5th round. He's still my guy. And if I'm picking at the end of the 5th, early 6th, and I went running back heavy, I have no qualms with this, because I do agree with Mikey where the Giants have the opportunity to spread it out. But I don't think we're going to see Toney just getting peppered with targets. Slayton and Shepard are kind of going to eat each other's volume up more than anything. Golladay is going to be the one consistent option that I think Jones uses as a security blanket / like, oh shit, you need to bail me out kind of guy in a jump ball situation, because that's what Galladay does. So I think he'll have no issue, if everyone can stay healthy, living up to that ADP. So of the receivers that we've talked about, I love him at his ADP. I'm all about 5'10" for Kenny Galladay.
So question, Ben, when you like put our positions on there, do you put them in the same order that they finished the previous year when you like before we go in and post our number rankings to that guy specifically?
No.
You don't? Okay. I was just curious because I was wondering if that was what he finished in 2019. But last year we all had him ranked extremely high. You had him at 6, I had him at 7, Mikey had him 8, Ryan had at 7.
Wow.
Yeah, like it was warranted because his 2019 he had over 1,100 yards. He had 11 touchdowns. I mean, he was really, really, really awesome, and he proved to be a very good asset for Matt Stafford. I mean, 2 years ago, Matt Stafford was having a phenomenal fucking year, and a large part of that was how good as a player as Kenny Galladay is. The reason why I have Kenny Galladay so low is because, one, the offense is going to be spread around, which is a big deal. 2, Daniel Jones is not even half the talent that Matthew Stafford is. And 3, and most importantly, Kenny Galladay was quite literally the only, I mean, sure, they had Marvin Jones, but Kenny Galladay was really the only legitimate option for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they had no running game whatsoever because DeAndre Swift wasn't there in 2019. They didn't have TJ Hawkinson, or they did have TJ Hawkinson, but he was a rookie. You can't expect much from rookie tight ends. Aside from that, Matt Stafford literally had Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay. Marvin Jones is not a red zone target. Kenny Galladay is, and he proved that with his 11 touchdowns. It's just, we're having Kenny Galladay, I think at ADP of wide receiver 23, I do think that's reasonable. Clearly I have him as wide receiver 30. I'm not going to have any Kenny Galladay on my team. It's not that I don't have faith in him. It's I don't have faith in Daniel Jones. This ball is going to be spread around way too much. Kenny Galladay is not finding the end zone 11 times. Not with if Evan Ingram is there and actually remembers how to catch a ball, and if Saquon Barkley is on the field for 16, 17 games this year, like, I'm sorry, but Saquon is the red zone plan. Not Kenny Galladay, not Evan Ingram. Saquon is the red zone plan, and I don't think many people could really argue that. Kenny Galladay will get his. He's going to have some weeks where he'll get you those 18 to 25 fantasy points that you're really, really hoping for out of your wide receiver too. But I think there's going to be a lot of inconsistency there this year, and that's why I'm so low on him.
I want to ask DJ a question about Galladay, because every time I bring up the Giants offense and how I'm kind of slowly falling in love with it, he just wants to just humble me. He wants to say, dude, it's the Giants, it's Daniel Jones. So DJ, let's just say that you're in the market for a wide receiver. You're in the 5th round. I'm going to go just based on ADP. I'm going to go with the 2 guys ahead of him, then Kenny Galladay, and then the 2 guys below him, because they're all on that same thing. Who are you taking of this group? You've got Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Galladay, and then DJ Moore and OBJ.
Who am I taking?
Yeah.
I initially thought Tyler Lockett because he's massively this fucking dog. He's massively underrated and disrespected, and it's ridiculous. But I am of the belief that DJ Moore is going to be a top 5 wide receiver. Like, I think he's just going to be a fucking target monster for Sam Darnold. I think his touchdowns are going to go up. They could be 2 touchdowns. I don't care. 2 more touchdowns than what he previously had. I really think he's going to be a legitimate, target machine. So I'm super high on DJ Moore. I'm going to try to snag him in every fucking league I can have, because he's my guy that I'm vaulting him up. I'm going to grab him around to 2 earlier. So right now it's DJ Moore. I do also, this is where I struggle with numbers, guys. How do you translate Kenny Galladay with Matt Stafford and try to make those numbers work when you're looking at Daniel Jones and the New York Giants? It's so hard. I have him at 15 because he's just an extreme talent. He's an extreme talent. And I honestly just think it's a point where Daniel Jones is I'm just going to feed this guy. Like Kelvin Johnson with Sean Hill, you're just going to find a way to get him the ball one way or the other. And he's just going to go out there and make plays. In 15, I mean, it's not that high in the long scheme of things. So I think he's more than capable of reaching that 15, if not higher. Obviously, we know he's a talented guy. But, I mean, what else does Daniel Jones have besides Saquon Barkley? He's never had a receiver this talented. The fact is, their offense isn't that good. Daniel Jones turns it over a lot. But even if his numbers suffer, Jameis Winston threw 30-plus touchdowns and 30 interceptions, and his wide receivers dominated. So Kenny Golladay can have a really good season, regardless of how bad Daniel Jones is.
The biggest thing for me, though, is just going back to the potential inconsistencies, not only with this offense, but with Kenny Golladay. Believe it or not, in 2019, when he put up those tremendous stats, he scored 6.5 or less fantasy points in 6 of his 16 games. I don't want to nitpick every single week because, obviously every player has bad weeks. But if you're drafting him to be your legitimate wide receiver 2 on your team, and if you are higher than the consensus of wide receiver 23 and you're expecting a lot of upside there, he's going to have you winning weeks for sure. But I think he is also in the case where, if he's going to completely bust 6 times in a 16-game season with Matt Stafford, he's got to be good at least for those 6 games with Daniel Jones.
I just feel like it's a case of what's his other option. Stafford can sling it to almost anybody. I don't think Daniel Jones really has much of a choice. I really don't.
But it kind of comes back to the knock on Golladay always is he's not a complete receiver. He doesn't run every route great. He's not awesome at route running. He's not an absolute burner. He's got really good hands and he's great at jump balls. Yeah, but I mean, he runs 3 to 4 routes very good, and he's athletic and he can make defensive backs look like idiots because of his height and speed and jumping ability. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I go back to that, my own question to DJ, and I'm just I'm between those same 2 guys you were. And that's where I say man, if he's on the board right there, I'm all in on him. But the idea of potentially having Tyler Lockett or DJ Moore, because we'll talk about the Panthers in another episode, but that's a very tough debate for me. That DJ Moore versus Kenny Golladay is extremely tough for me. So I honestly also think DJ Moore's ADP might bump up a little bit once training camp starts, and
I think so too.
And we see how that goes. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
We got talking these streets.
Oh yeah, big time.
I fucking hate Sleeper. I love the Sleeper app, but I fucking hate the Sleeper app because I just get these notifications of coach says that fucking David Montgomery is going to get 20+ carries easily a game. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Exactly. It's just fucking with everybody else's brains.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time I get a notification from them, it's just I want to throw my phone through the goddamn computer.
I'm trying to trade for Mike Williams, and next thing I know, there's a fucking Mikey, I was trying to trade for Mike Williams, and not more than 5 minutes later, it was probably 5 minutes max, there's that notification saying Mike Williams is going to essentially just be a target machine this year. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now, Sleeper app? What is happening?
And what a useless update. Oh, okay. A coach said that we're going to use him in this role. Ooh.
Yeah.
You think the coaches are giving away all of these secret game plans? No, all they did was kind of bone you there. We got one more fantasy relevant-ish position for the Giants, and that's tight end, because Evan Ingram is going as the 15th tight end off the board. I've got him at 14. Mikey's got him at 15. DJ has Eva Mendez. Honestly, I've been doing a couple of mock drafts, and I've been playing with the idea of taking a tight end as early as round 3 and seeing how my lineup looks, or waiting until round 13, 14 and seeing how my team looks. I'm typically a guy that wants to wait on the tight end, but man, I hate how my roster looks with Evan Ingram as my starting tight end.
Really?
I don't like it.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I am really I'm obviously way low on tight ends. I am willing to risk it all on Evan Ingram just because of pure talent. Guys, we can't sit here. Yeah, he dropped a lot of fucking balls, right? But there was a week that he dropped 26 points on us. I think he had 100-something yards and a couple touchdowns or something like that. And they want to get him the ball. They have game plans for him. He's extremely athletic. He runs like a wide receiver. If drops his only problems, I think that can be fixed. I really do. I talk about Devontae Adams all the time. Packers fans wanted to cut Devontae Adams after year 2.
Yeah, year 2.
I know this guy's in year 5 now, but this guy is a freakish talent. So if I'm going to go ahead and wait that long, wait to get a tight end, Evan Ingram is a guy I'm 100% going to try to grab because he is that talented, and he's a guy they do plan to get the ball in games.
So Evan Ingram for me is the exact same thing with Saquon Barkley. We're chasing the rookie year, right? DJ, I don't know if you know this, but Evan Ingram hasn't had more than 11 fantasy points in a single game since week 3 of the 2019 season.
Oh, I thought he had one huge game last year.
No, last year his best game was 10.9 points against Cincinnati. All the other weeks, 3.2, 1.8, 4.6, 1.7, 2.2. Like he was a dumpster fire.
What was the game recap I was watching on NFL Network, but I swear
it honestly might have been from his rookie year because his rookie year, his rookie year, he set a record for rookie tight ends, right? And that's why everyone is so excited over Evan Ingram because we're chasing his rookie year.
But and he is a very good athlete.
He is, but for the first time since his rookie year, since before his rookie year, everyone who plays fantasy football is finally starting to temper expectations on Evan Ingram and finally realizing, okay, maybe it was a one-hit wonder season, especially now with how much the ball is going to be spread around. I mean, it's hard to believe that Evan Ingram could be a tight end 1 in this league. I mean, I was discussing, I think I said it last week, tight end 8 through tight end 16. We're all within 10 points of each other, right? So it doesn't matter if you get tight end 8 or if you get tight end 16. It's pretty much like you're playing the exact same player every week. Who gives a shit? So, and that's probably where Ingram falls into. Now, I will say, out of all of the guys that are going to fall into that range of possibilities, Ingram does offer a pretty substantial amount of upside, but that's just because of his 2018 rookie season that we saw. Like, I just – and Ben, to your point, like I could not stomach seeing my team with Evan Ingram as my starting tight end. I'm in the same position as you, right? If I'm in the end of round 2 or round 3 and Darren Waller or George Kittle are sitting there because Travis Kelce's going in the first, early second, I'm probably not going to be getting him. I'd like to, but I won't. If I can't get my hands on one of those top 3 tight ends, I'm probably punting the position. But I would not punt it nearly this far to Evan Ingram. I'd get a guy who we saw do it pretty recently in like I would rather take a gamble on a Logan Thomas or a Robert Tonyan, or even going after Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith and hoping one of them sticks in the Patriots offense. Like it's just Evan Ingram is a guy I want nothing to do with. And you can see like I have him as tight end 15, which lines up with the ADP, but like we can only chase his rookie year for so long. He hasn't done anything fantasy relevant since week 3 of 2019. Like that's just, I want no part in it.
It's weird. And I think I got to that point in like these mock drafts because like you look what's on the board when you get to round like 9, 10, you're like, I'd rather have one of these backup running backs or wide receivers over any of these tight ends. Well, as the board clears out, you find yourself in round 14. You still don't have a tight end. And there's Evan Ingram just staring at you and you feel obligated to hit submit on the button. And you're like, by the end of the thing, you're like, yeah, you've got some decent depth and you're happy with what happened elsewhere. But then you look at tight end, you're like, shit, I need to start one of these guys every single week. And that guy's name is Evan Ingram. And I can't get behind it. So I'm telling you, my advice is if you're drafting Evan Ingram, do it. You got to do it in a platoon situation. You need to roster 2 tight ends. You got to play a hot hand.
Okay. So Mikey, your numbers are a little off, especially for you. You're looking at the wrong scoring. It was 6 catches for 129 yards. He had 18 points, but he had a fumble. So he had 16 points. And then he did have a few over 10-point games last year, but it was against Cincinnati where he had 6 for 129. Yeah. And then he had a 14-point, a 12-point, a 10-point, a 15-point. So he had some good fucking games for a tight end when it comes to point PPR and half-point PPR. So you were looking at standard in that. So I'm glad you finally pucked up.
The only rebuttal that I can have to that, and yeah, it looks like I was looking at standard instead of PPR fucking fantasy.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I was like six catches for 129 yards is not 10 points.
That seemed a little low to me as well, but it be like that sometimes. But either way, I mean, at that point in the season, I mean, think about it. There was no Saquon. Kenny Golladay was obviously not there. Sterling Shepard was probably injured that week because he missed half the season. Darius Slayton there was a lot of expectation for him after his rookie year, and he was a shell of himself last year. Like, I'm pretty sure at the midway point in last season, Evan Ingram was quite literally the only healthy option for Daniel Jones to be throwing the ball to. So yeah, I mean, we can look at that stat and we can say, okay, yeah, like he still has it. He can still do it. But the fact of the matter is it was against a shitty team, and he was probably the only healthy starting option on that team at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's talented. He just has catch. I mean, he just has the dropsies a little bit. If you took that away, which I honestly think that might be one of the easiest things to improve for a wide receiver tight end, he has a lot of really good fucking games in him. Like, I just think it's a mental issue that golfers get, the yips. I said Devontae's had it. Brandon Marshall dropped the ball a lot, but obviously he was targeted so much that it kind of didn't really matter. But I just think he really I do think people are really playing off on him, and I'm doing my gambler thing. Like, good. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go grab a guy who I think has the potential to finish as a tight end 1.
So, Ben, let me ask you, because I know you did this with Kenny Golladay. Could you tell me who the 2 tight ends are before Ingram and the 2 tight ends after Ingram? If you still have it up.
I can. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the 2 before, and it's a significant jump because it's Tyler Higbee at 120 overall, and then Jonnu Smith at 138, Evan Ingram at 162. So it's a fairly significant jump.
Okay, so who are the guys that are slightly after him?
And then you got Irv Smith and Zach Ertz.
All right. I mean, out of all 3 of those, I'd honestly go with Zach Ertz over them, just because Zach Ertz is only 2 seasons removed from finishing as a top 3 tight end. Like the Eagles were a fucking dumpster fire last year, and Zach Ertz played really, really poorly, all things considered. But if you throw out last year, he finished the past 3 years as a top 4 tight end. So if I'm going to bet on talent by going with one of these super late tight ends, it's going to be Zach Ertz. Granted, I'm still taking Evan Ingram over Irv Smith. I think we talked about how much we don't really like Irv Smith last week. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe tight end 15 is a slight over adjustment from fantasy, but that's where he finished last year. He finished at exactly tight end 15.
Yeah,
so.
He was 16.5 point PPR. So it's not off from that. I just think he's better than that, and it's all to the drops.
A lot of it is,
which I think is fixable. I really do. Like, in the long scheme of things, it's a very fixable part of the game.
I agree, because they didn't make it into the NFL by dropping balls. They know how to catch the balls.
Exactly.
You know? Like, I completely agree with you. But I think the hardest part about that is getting in the right mental state. And Evan Ingram has been absolutely harassed this offseason. I'm sure. So we'll see how he bounces back. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that statement that catches are probably the easiest thing for an
He
NFL
might be
player.
the one guy from that offense I end up drafting in all my leagues. I'm not even kidding. Like, I don't see myself ending up with anybody else but Evan Ingram.
I can 100% say that we went more in depth on Evan Ingram than any other fantasy podcast has this entire offseason. And yes, DJ, Mr. Anti-tight end, was throwing just a flamethrower out there. I want to wait till the 14th round to get my tight end 1, and here I am talking even more about Evan Ingram.
Okay, I will.
I've got Xavier and Howard thoughts, but since we're already over an hour into this, I'm going to put that on my fans only page. Is that what it's called? My
only fans.
Only fans? Yeah, that's old as fuck, man. I'll be doing that as I watch Mona.
You can't give us any. You can't give us any thoughts, huh?
DJ, I've got way too many thoughts on my mind.
Well, I mean, nobody cares that much because fuck the Dolphins, they stink, and now your best player's gone. So
I'm gonna give you like a 15 to 20 second spiel. I'm finding peace in having to part ways potentially here with Xavier and Howard, because I think that was kind of part of the plan. You drafted Noah Monogany in the first round 2 years ago for a reason. He's got bad knees. You just gave him a contract extension. He wants more. You find you at the end of the day, you have to perform your business. Yes, you got rid of one of the only guys that's gotten 10 interceptions over the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, you got to do something. And guess what? He's never put together 2 awesome seasons. So if you're selling him now, you are selling Howard at your all-time high. If you can get something for him, it might end up being kind of a blessing in disguise because his knees are very fragile.
At the end of the day, you got to perform your business. That's all I could take from that entire quote. I mean, you can't trade a top cornerback. That kind of sucks.
Well, you have to. He doesn't want
one of the most important positions in the league. But yeah, good luck.
He also had his best season ever when Byron Jones was over there doing unbelievable things, but he's just super underrated because he's not pulling down 10 picks in a season. You're welcome. Check us out on Twitter at Loaded Box. Check out our website, loadedboxpodcast.com. All of our podcast episodes, articles, especially Mikey's latest one, our redraft and dynasty rankings. Next episode, we'll be doing the same thing with 2 new teams. We didn't get a chance to talk about who those teams would be during this episode, but we'll figure that out for you. We're available everywhere. Subscribe, rate, review. Send us out.
Bye.